So it was a 28 million jackpot, and I was 21 years old. I was a gas station clerk living at my parents' house in their basement. Woke up to my father banging on the bedroom door. He said, Tim, get up. Somebody sold the winning Powerball ticket at your gas station. I just started panicking. I was like, where the heck is the ticket? And it was crumpled up in a little ball in my pants. They all matched, every single number. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe, it's just so surreal.
You would imagine you'd be ecstatic, but there's this whole other side.
The expectation was that I would pay for everything. And all of a sudden, I wasn't just Tim, the family member. I was Tim, the lottery winner. I really sort of self-isolated because my level of trust for people went down. I had family members where relationships were damaged.
Do you think it made you happier?
I think it...
Timothy Schultz, thank you so much for joining me. I tune into your content on YouTube. I'm a really, really big fan. Let's start off with the biggest question here. It's my understanding that you're a lottery winner. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes. I won the Powerball jackpot, a Powerball jackpot in 1999, and it was extremely, extremely life-changing, for sure.
How much did you win?
It was a 28 million jackpot. So it was a 28 million jackpot, and I was 21 years old. So I believe I was one of the youngest winners in history, at least in the United States. And it was extremely life-changing. It was kind of like, you're on a roller coaster or something, and you're on one track, and all of a sudden you go to another track. It's like my life was turned on its head, and it just really, really changed everything. It was so surreal.
I guess naturally the first question that comes up is, do you get used to it at some point? Because, I think people tuning in, they would think the reaction would be, I won $28 million. But through the course of time, I could see how casual it is for you now. Do you get used to this at some point?
Well, at this point, this was 1999. And so I've now lived more of my life being a lottery winner than not being a lottery winner. So it is sort of like part of who I am now, or part of what happened to me in my story. And it's just, how life can go. You think it's going to go in this straight line, and then it never goes in a straight line. There's always something, and it's like a roller coaster. That's the nature of life. And for some people, when you win the lottery jackpot, it's just that roller coaster can take you on this incredible place. And that's what happened to me.
Well, let's rewind the clock a little bit to 1999. Tell me a little bit about what your life was like then and what led up to this major jackpot win.
Well, at the time when I won the lottery, I was a gas station clerk, and I was working 40 to 60 hours a week at this gas station. I was an assistant manager. I was just trying to put myself through college, and I was just trying to go to school, make as much money as I can, kind of hustle. I had a couple of vending machine ideas on the side, and I really was motivated by trying to make money. Not that I was making a lot of money, but that was my mindset. And I was working, as much as I could, and just, hustling, selling all kinds of things at the gas station, including lottery tickets. And so basically I had this dream that I was going to win, and it convinced me that, hey, you might actually win this dream, because it was so real. And I don't know if you've ever had one of these. Some people have, some people haven't. But after that point in time, I started playing consistently, usually just one ticket at a time. And I was telling people, friends and coworkers and all kinds of people, that I was going to win. And I just felt very lucky. Like everything was sort of going my way this particular day. And I felt like I was going to win, and I played, and then it did. And so when it did, it was like, I felt like I was in a movie or something, because, you say something and then all of a sudden it happens in real life. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, this is crazy. And I went back, at the time I was living at my parents' house in their basement. And that night after I'd won, before I knew that I won, I was sleeping there, and I woke up to my father banging on the bedroom door, and he was just banging. He said, Tim, get up. Somebody sold the winning Powerball ticket at your gas station. No, he said, you sold the winning Powerball ticket at your gas station. Did you buy a ticket? And I just thought to myself, well, I did buy a ticket, and I told all these people I was going to win. I believed that I was going to win. Maybe I actually won. Maybe I just started panicking. I was like, where the heck is the ticket? And I was going through my room and everything, and I was not the most organized 21-year-old at the time, and I was just rummaging through papers, and I finally found it, and it was crumpled up in a little ball in my pants from the night before, and I unraveled it. And this was 1999, so the internet wasn't what it is today. And I ran upstairs and compared it to the numbers in the newspaper, and they all matched, every single number. And my father was there, and we just started hugging and jumping up and down like little kids in a candy store, two grown people, and we were just screaming. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe, it's just so surreal. And then at that point, it was like, what the heck do you do if you come across a ticket like that? And I had no idea. I was 21 years old, a gas station clerk, and just, what do you do? It was very, I didn't know. And my father had the foresight to have the idea to call this attorney and some financial advisors and kind of get a plan together before turning, well, just to get a plan. What do you do with the ticket? And one of the first things they told us was secure it, put it someplace secure. So we put it in a safety deposit box. And so that was pretty surreal, because I just felt like sort of looking over my shoulder all the time, because like, does this person know that I'm holding this ticket worth this much money? And, kind of paranoia, but also the excitement and the level of adrenaline and the level of euphoria was just out of this world.
Yeah. And, I'm thinking when you won this, you describe it as being surreal. But first, I want to just go back a little bit. This isn't like a figurative dream. Like, you hear people say all the time, well, I've always dreamt to be a, X, Y, or Z in terms of career. Like you literally had a dream about winning this thing.
Yes, I did. I was feeling really down on my luck. I was living in this efficiency apartment at that time, and it's basically one big room, the kitchen, the bathroom, everything was in the same room, and I was sleeping on this air mattress, and I just was feeling depressed and really down on myself about finances and my future, and kind of hopeless. And I went to sleep, and I opened myself up to what I call the universe, or God, if you want to use that word. And it was in this meditative sleep state. And then I had this dream where I had already won the lottery, where it had already happened within this dream. And it was so real that when I woke up, it took a little bit, like a few seconds, to get my bearings and understand that it hadn't happened. It was that real. And then after that point, I went out the same day and bought a ticket. Of course, I didn't win that day, but it was just very real to me. And then from that point on, I actually believed that I had a chance that I would win. I really believed that. So when I did, and whether you think that's coincidence or not, I mean, I find these types of stories pretty interesting, because this type of thing has happened to me quite a bit.
How long after the dream did you actually win?
It was about 3 months.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And you were kind of talking about just the question of like, what do I do next? You guys get an attorney, you guys hire financial advisors. How long after did you come into, the money? And what was next for you? Did you work another day in that gas station?
Yeah, well, from the one of the questions, did I work another day? I did go back because one of the things that we were advised was, or that I was advised was, where I won, you couldn't claim it anonymously. And so since we had to do it publicly, I was the type of person that never, ever missed a day of work. I always showed up, even if I was feeling sick. And so everyone knew that I sold the ticket. There was media at the gas station that wanted to talk to me and interview me for selling the winning ticket. And so it would have been a huge red flag if I didn't show up and we didn't have a plan yet, what to do, because this is the very next day, I believe. So I went in for one last day and acted as if I hadn't won and gave interviews to media. And I'm not an actor, so it was kind of fun, but at the same time, the inside of me was sort of trembling because here I am, telling a reporter, whoever wins, and customers, because countless customers wanted to ask about it, whoever wins, I really hope that they remember me. All the while I was sort of smiling on the inside because I knew that they would, because I was the one that had the ticket. But from the time when that actually got processed and everything, I believe it was a few weeks, if I remember correctly, but I don't know the exact time frame.
When you won, you're describing this surreal feeling. There was this big question of what do I do next? It was incredibly exciting. And at 21, I would imagine that's enhanced by like 1,000. How long did that euphoria last?
Oh my gosh. Well, definitely a few weeks. For a long time, I just felt extremely grateful and just like it was a huge blessing. And I still feel that way. But at the same time, there were as the adrenaline came down and the euphoria came down, I realized that, there were these other things that I never, ever anticipated about winning the lottery that affected me socially and psychologically with people and relationships, because all of a sudden I was the one holding this ticket, or even after we turned it, I was the one that won the lottery, not my family, not my circle of people. And so I felt like an outlier, and which on the surface, it's not a bad thing. It's a problem a lot of people would like to have, but I just really felt kind of on an island because no one else had gone through it. No one else could do the things that I wanted to do financially. Like if I wanted to go on a vacation, then I had to pay for other people. If I wanted to go to a nice restaurant, I felt as if I had to pay for other people. And that's just two examples, but it goes on and on. And so it really changed. That was something that was really foreign to me. And I would say that's the other side of the coin when it comes to the adrenaline and the euphoria. Back to your question, is that the dip of it was awesome, it's amazing, it's the best thing in the world, to, well, wait a second, well, I'm paying for all these people, and these people, some of them, I had family members where relationships were damaged because they wanted to basically ask for money. And I did a lot of things for a lot of people, and I have no regrets about it whatsoever, including, family. But family, and most family, I want to preface this, we're very supportive and positives. So I don't want to just put down my family, because most of them are, I love them all, every single one of them. But the fact is that with some people, if you win an immense amount of money or a lottery jackpot that's significant, it doesn't always have the same level of respect, because it wasn't it's not viewed by some people as being earned. So it's not the same as if you're like a CEO or, that type of where you've earned it that way. At least for me, I had a couple people even tell me, like this one family member in particular, it's like, you got that for nothing. You just got lucky. And, is also as 21 years old. So here are people that have been working for decades and decades, and they see a 21-year-old win this jackpot. And I think jealousy can be involved and all kinds of emotions like that. So that took an emotional toll on me psychologically, and socially it changed relationships. And I sort of went into I don't want to say a shell, but I really sort of self-isolated because my level of trust for people went down because I thought, well, maybe they might want me for the wrong reasons. I was really living in this fearful place. And that doesn't happen to everybody because I meet and interview lottery winners all the time on my podcast. And I know that that doesn't happen to everybody, but that was my experience. So,
and especially, you're talking about a 21-year-old kid at the time, and there's the whole journey of finding your identity and finding your purpose, and all of a sudden you're a millionaire overnight. It kind of sounds like what you're describing to me as sudden wealth syndrome. Is that kind of the experience you went through? It sounds like the anxiety, the distress, purpose, identity. Is that right? And if so, how did you overcome it? Do you ever really 100% overcome it?
Yes, I absolutely believe that I was afflicted, if you want to use that word, with sudden wealth syndrome. And it's something that a lot of people would like to experience. They would like to have that problem. But really, so that's kind of the negative side of what I experienced after I won the lottery. And for me, it was a very real thing. And one of the symptoms, if you want to use that word, one of the effects of sudden wealth syndrome is guilt for even having won. And I felt even a sense of guilt because I won the lottery, but all these people around me didn't necessarily win the lottery. And I helped a lot of people. I helped so many people as much as I could, but I also wanted to listen to my financial advisors and be financially responsible. And so I knew that there were real limits for what I could or couldn't do. And I wanted to, live that way. And so I had to tell people no, the very important word of no. And when I did that, it was one of the hardest things for me to do at that time in my life. And I really felt this sort of guilt even for having won at some points because I had these relationships that were really damaged and ruined because not everyone understood where I was coming from. But I also wanted to be financially responsible, especially because I was 21 years old. I don't want to go out and, that's a young age. You still have a lot of years left, most likely. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you pointed to this. A lot of people would say, hey, that's a great problem to have. But there's a whole side of winning major, money like this where people don't talk about all the time. So I really appreciate you kind of breaking that down. I kind of think about it and I go, man, if I was 21 and I won multi-millions of dollars, you would imagine you'd be ecstatic, but there's this whole other side. And with that, did you find that your friend, because you weren't able to stay anonymous, you had to go public with this. Did you find that your friend group naturally expanded, or was it more isolation because you're totally different now? You are a multimillionaire.
Well, I think everybody's different, and I love meeting other people that have won massive prizes at young ages, at all ages, but especially at young ages. And I know from that experience that everyone's different. For me, I really sort of isolated myself because I had this, and I've been writing a lot about it in this book that I'm working on right now. So I'm doing a lot of introspective thinking about it. And it really I felt like a walking ATM machine or something. I didn't feel comfortable like going into certain places with people that I just thought that the expectation was that I would pay for everything. And all of a sudden I wasn't just Tim, the fun person to hang out with, or Tim, the family member. I was Tim, the lottery winner. And for some people, the way they perceived me, it really changed. And I wasn't quite used to that. And it took a while to get over that. And eventually I did. I think I'm not afflicted by or affected by sudden wealth syndrome at all, but it took a few years, I think, for me to feel normal. It was even hard to date people. And this might sound hard to believe, but I had a really thriving dating life before I won the lottery, and as a gas station clerk, making a little over minimum wage. I had no problem getting dates, and that was just part of my life. And then after I won, even though there was no shortage of people that wanted to date me, I just had a really hard time trusting anybody. And so the people that was easier to trust were the relationships I had before I won. Those are the people that I trusted the most. And so when a relationship like that was damaged, such as with a family member, then that was, for me, pretty hurtful at the time. But in retrospect, I don't blame them. I understand where they're coming from, but I also understand where I'm coming from. And I think it comes down to self-love and self-respect, also, in addition to empathy for others, that really matters. And I understand now that was called up here from the inside. It wasn't the lottery that caused these problems. It wasn't a family member that caused these problems. It's how I chose to perceive it. And that's how I look at it now. So I feel that I'm just trying to look at the bright side of it. What can I learn? How can I get better? Because we're all a product of our experiences. Sorry to ramble there, but
no, absolutely. That's really, really good feedback. What was your first major purchase?
Oh, first major purchase? Well, my first purchase was a video game system because I was 21 years old, and that's where my mindset was. And it was amazing because it's something I couldn't afford before. And it was awesome. And I played some Legend of Zelda on I'm dating myself, but Nintendo NES, I think it was. And it was incredible. The first major purchase outside of that, I think, was a vehicle. So it was a new vehicle, and that was pretty amazing at the time.
I would imagine. Was it a fancy color? Was it like red or yellow, something shiny?
Well, it was shiny, but it was black. It was a big black pickup truck, actually, but yeah, that's what I was into at the time.
Very cool. So you have your I think on your YouTube page, and you correct me if I'm wrong, it says lottery winner turned journalist. I'm a journalist wanting to be turned into a lottery winner. How cool would that be? But how did you find your purpose? What was your experience like getting to journalism? You talk a lot to a lot of people who are affiliated with the lottery, and it's not just winners, but it's attorneys, it's watchdogs, but you find yourself your own little community with these winners. What was that path like getting into that?
Well, before I won the lottery, even growing up as a kid, I liked to interview people, and one of my goals was to go to college before I won the lottery. And so after I won, eventually it took a while to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. But once I figured that out, then I felt that I should still go to college. And I studied film and broadcast news and journalism. And so that's what I went for. And I loved it. And then I worked on a few different productions, some of which were my own through my own company, and then some of which were for other people and other companies. And so I did that type of thing for a few years, for a number of years. And then I think it was 2000, well, it wasn't too long ago, maybe 4 years ago. or so, I started this YouTube channel and this podcast, Lottery, Dreams, and Fortune. And the main impetus or motivation, initially at least, was to meet and interview other lottery winners, because I felt that I'd find it fascinating, and it's something that's a huge thing to have in common with people. And I thought people that win the lottery are more apt to want to speak with me. So that's just what I thought. So I got into it, and initially it was kind of difficult to get lottery winners to come onto the show and to speak with me, because I didn't have a track record, but I did have the experience of being a winner myself. So there was that. But over time, it's gotten a little easier to get people to come onto the show. And oftentimes I have people reaching out to me as well.
You know, after speaking to so many other lottery winners, given that you are one yourself as well, besides the fact that the one thing you guys share in common is that you guys won the lottery, is there another big takeaway that you guys all have in common?
Yeah, well, there's a few of them. And one is like the moment of winning. I love hearing that story from everyone, because I can really identify with what that feels like. And so that's something that I think a lot of people, I mean, obviously have in common, the winning moment. And for some people, they've also experienced some of the psychological effects that I was talking about earlier, or social effects. Not everyone, but some people. And other people, I've actually interviewed a few people that have had dreams about it, other winners before it's happened, and people that have had intuitive hunches, what they believe to be intuitive hunches, or they believe in manifestation and that sort of thing. And those types of stories are, I find, pretty interesting. Not everyone experiences something like that, but a lot of people do. And I find it especially interesting if something happened that was sort of out of the ordinary, that convinced them that they should buy a ticket, or, you know, and you might think that's just a coincidence, or you might not. You might be into it, but I find it pretty interesting.
It is very interesting. Let's get into that a little bit. So you had a dream that you were going to win. There's also the other aspect of this is one of hundreds of millions of a chance. When you speak to, well, first of all, for yourself particularly, how do you make sense of it in your mind? Is it a combination of both? Is it meant to be? And when you also speak to other lottery winners, do you find that they're like, this is pure luck, I'm so grateful, or I had a dream too, or there was something that urged me to buy this thing?
Yeah, well, it's so interesting. And there's so many winners that I've personally met and interviewed that have had experiences that led them to believe they were going to win before it happened. Or one person wrote the number, I believe, and put it under her pillow, and she only played when it hit a certain number, 112 million. That's the only time she would play, is when it hit 112 million for the jackpot. And then she won that exact amount, and she believes in manifestation and that sort of thing. And so that's just one story, but there are lots of people like that maybe not a literal dream. Some people do have literal dreams. Like one person I interviewed who won a Lucky for Life prize in Washington, she had this dream about Lucky for Life, and she was feeling, it was a similar story, it sort of paralleled my own, where she had this dream about Lucky for Life after being depressed about her finances, and she didn't know what Lucky for Life was or anything. And she dreamt the name of the store clerk. And I think it was, what was her name? I want to say Diane, but she dreamt the name of the store clerk. The time of day was 2:00 in her dream. So she went to this store she wouldn't normally go to the next day, I believe. And she saw this name, the clerk with that name tag for Diane. And I might be might not be the exact name, but she saw this, and it was 2:00. Then she saw the words "lucky for life," and so she said, "Well, I guess that's the one I'll play." She never played the lottery, and then she won. So is that just a coincidence? I don't, I don't personally think so. And with the odds are astronomical, of course, and they're very interesting. They're very interesting. They make headlines. You have a better chance of, being struck by lightning, dying in an airplane crash. I've even heard being crushed by a vending machine. Not to get too dark, but these are all headlines, and it's interesting, and it sells. And it's, on the one hand, true that the odds are this, but on the other hand, it only takes one ticket for a chance to win. And personally, I never listen to the odds. I think it's important to play responsibly and never spend more than you can afford to lose.
Right.
It's very important, but it only takes one ticket for a chance. And when you play the lottery, you're sort of buying the right to dream, like not necessarily the literal dream, but the metaphorical dream of what will I do if and when I win, because it is possible. And whether you're one of these people like I meet fairly often that believe they're going to win before it happens, or you're not, if it happens, it is really, really surreal. It is like, at least for me, I felt like a deer in headlights. It just really, even if you expect that it's going to happen, or if you had a dream about it, it's like when you do win, it just really can change everything very, very quickly. And so I think sudden wealth, and perhaps even sudden lottery fame, if you have to claim it publicly, can happen, and it can really change so much in a person's life, and it does for people all the time. And real people win, and that's one of the misconceptions out there with some people, is that people don't win the lottery. Real people do win. Just play responsibly. Never spend more than you can afford to lose, and have fun. That's my advice.
Good advice. Did it make you happier? In the short term, obviously, but there's the days old notion of money doesn't equal happiness. It could solve a lot of things. Do you think it made you happier?
I think it, in the sense of providing time and providing opportunities, and those things count for quality of life. So in that sense, I think it did. And I think that it does for a lot of people, because there's a lot of positive things you can do for yourself and for other people. Even to give and help other people, it's really positive. And so it makes me feel good. So in that sense, it did make me happier, but it didn't solve all of my problems. And that's another misconception about winning, that it fixes everything. But the truth is that, at least in my opinion, that it's not a black or white answer. It's not, is the lottery a blessing or a curse? Because it can be either, depending on who you are. It matters who you are on the inside, because when you win, for a lot of people, for most of the people I've met and interviewed, and for myself at least, it sort of magnifies who you already are on the inside. It doesn't change who you are, but it magnifies who you already are. And so what you're already into, or what, if you're if you're depressed, for example, then, or you're into a habit that is not very healthy, or I could just go on with the negative things, then perhaps it could give more room for those things. But on the other hand, if you're really into, you name it, church or a sport or something, you can do that on a bigger level too. For me, I was really into journalism and film and just production, and my goal has always been to entertain and inspire mass amounts of people in positive ways, because that makes me happy. So I still feel extremely grateful. I think it's one of the biggest blessings that has ever happened to me. And it's not just the win, it's even the negative experiences I'm grateful for, because I learned from those. And I feel that it's important. And that's the journey that I took. But, there's all kinds of journeys that people take, and it can really, really change a lot of things, though. It can be very positive.
It sure can. And you follow the journeys of countless other lottery winners. What's one that stands out to you?
Well, there are so many. And, I interview people that have won anywhere from a few $1,000s to hundreds of millions of dollars and everything in between. And I think for me, I am especially fascinated by stories where people feel that they had this energy coming to them, and then it happened in real life, which happens all the time to people that win, and it makes headlines when it does, of course. But Randy Rush is one person. He won a Lotto Max 50 million in Canada, and he was already making six figures before he won, but it really, six figures to 50 million is quite different. And it really changed his life and trajectory. And he had this energy where he felt like he was going to win before it happened. And it's really incredible. And he wrote a book, and Randy Rush is one person, but there's all kinds of people and how they have won. There's a jackpot winner that won 10 million in the state of Missouri, and he had this hunch that he was going to win. He stopped on a whim and bought this ticket and won. But for him, he had some people that looked at him with jealousy after winning as well, which I sort of really identified with. And the most inspiring story I think that I've heard, and I've heard a lot of really inspiring positive stories because most of them are, the most inspiring story I've ever heard is Roberto Mendoza. And he won, I believe it was $250,000 in the United States on a scratch ticket, I believe. And he really, really talk about overcoming the odds. He grew up in a third world country. I believe it was Venezuela, but it was definitely like South America or somewhere around there. He grew up in this war-torn country, and when he turned on the tap to get water, air would come out, and he was hungry. And he just grew up really hungry. They were in this war. He became a kidnap victim, and he was kidnapped, and eventually he was free of that. And he immigrated to the United States and now speaks several languages, and went on to become this renowned chef that has cooked for several presidents of the United States and celebrities such as Arnold Schwarzenegger. But he ended up winning the lottery, and he won $250,000. And what he did was he donated the entire prize. I've never heard of this, but the entire prize to help feed the homeless. And he has this charity for homeless people, and Roberto Mendoza is his name. And it's really a heartfelt, really inspiring story to come from that background and then to do that with your lottery prize. So.
Absolutely. And you hear a lot about those philanthropic endeavors. I've seen quite a few on your YouTube channel as well from the people you interview. Tim, do you still play the lottery?
I do once in a while. If something inspires me, or if sometimes there'll be a comment on either in one of my lives or, under the podcast or under the videos where someone will say, you should buy a ticket. And I was out doing man on the street interviews a few months ago, asking people questions about the lottery on the street. Do you play? What will you do if you win? Do you believe it's possible to dream about it before it happens? These types of questions. And this bird flew by and it pooped on me. I thought it was a raindrop, and I looked over and it was this bird poop. And so after I posted the video, all these people said, you are so you should go buy a lottery ticket, because apparently in a lot of cultures, that's a sign of luck to have a bird poop on you. I did not know this. So I went out and bought a lottery ticket. So if something inspires me, I definitely still play because I know it's possible to win. And it only takes one, as cliche as it sounds, it only takes one ticket for a chance to enter the lightning storm of the lottery. And the lottery god has no discrimination.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Tim, what am I not asking you that you'd like to share?
Well, in the process, there's a couple things, but one is I'm writing this book, so I've done a lot of thinking about my own personal story and people I've interviewed and the lottery in general. And I came across there's this stigma out there, first of all, that if you win the lottery, that 70 to 80% of lottery winners go broke. That is like, I don't know if you've heard this, but I mean, a lot of people have, and I believed it for a lot of years. I was told this by educated people. I've been interviewed, I can't tell you how many times, by even people that ask about that. What's your opinion on this statistic? And so I did this research because one of the chapters, in addition to being about my own story, is about misconceptions of winning the lottery. And I wanted to do some actual research into this. Why is this really happening? If so, why? And because most of the people I've met and interviewed, that hasn't happened to. So there's these anecdotal experiences of people that I personally have interviewed, that most of which haven't had financial problems like that, at least not 70 to 80% of them. And so when I actually did the research, it's really astonishing to me that there's no credible survey or study or anything like peer research out there to show that 70% or 80% of lottery winners go broke in 5 years, which is this statistic that is thrown around all the time, even in our mass media. And so I find it very interesting because it's actually more of a myth than anything, because unless you can find something I can't, but the evidence that I've found actually points to the opposite, where there's a survey where it said that 70% of winners are less likely to declare bankruptcy. There's another one from Sweden where lottery winners actually increased their wealth. And there's a couple others out there that are similar in nature. But so it's more hopeful, and that's kind of more along the lines of the people that I've met, and most of which that I've met and interviewed. So I guess that's just one thing that I try to put out there, because most people have this assumption that 70 to 80% of winners go broke, and I just don't think that's true. I used to think it was true, but I just don't think it's true.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I hear that all the time. And I do wonder, like, if the baseline for the win is like $1 million or more, or like 10,000 or more, it's probably a lot easier to go through $50,000 or $100,000 over the course of years versus, like 100 million or 28 million or what have you. Is that kind of the idea you had for your book? Like, talking about your experience of misconceptions, offering more of a hopeful perspective versus one that's like lottery's a tax on the poor, you might go broke, that kind of thing?
Well, I think that's kind of who I am and my nature. I'm more of an optimist and a positive person. I try to look at the glass being half full, but that wasn't the real drive. That's just something I discovered when I was writing it. The real drive for writing the book was just something that I've always wanted to do. And I was, in fact, inspired by another dream years ago to write it. And it was so real. And I had already written it. And I was like, oh my gosh, since that time, I've always wanted to write a book. And so now I'm finally doing it, and it's about 90% done. So I'm super excited about that, just to share my story and my experiences and some of those of some of the people that I've met and interviewed.
Looking back after winning the lottery, what's your biggest regret? Do you have any?
Biggest regret. Well, I try not to think that. I get asked this quite a bit because it's a really good question. I personally don't really think that way. I don't have regrets of anything because even the experiences that were challenging or negative, or the relationships such as with the relative that I was mentioning earlier that was damaged after winning the lottery, I don't regret anything really. It was a learning experience is how I look at it, because I think that happiness comes from the inside, and it's the experiences. It's really, we can frame it however we choose in our mind. We can frame it as being this horrible experience. I'm a victim to this. I'm a victim to that. I won the lottery, so all these people are out to get me, and it's the fault of all these other things. Or, well, hey, maybe this is a really positive opportunity. Maybe I can just try to have self-love and self-respect for myself and take people where they're at. But if it, doesn't work out, then you don't have to maintain that relationship. Just try to stay positive. Look at it more positively. I think there's a lot of power in the way we view the world.
So let's go ahead and flip the question then to the more optimistic side. What is like one day that encapsulates a young, millionaire who just won the lottery out there having the best time of their lives? Is there a day or week or anything that stands out?
Well, for me, I mean, the biggest difference for me was, especially at that time, going from working 40 to 60 hours a week, trying to study, put myself through college, to the life after. The biggest difference was the time for me. All of a sudden, I didn't have to do that. All of a sudden, I was retired at 21. And that's how it felt. And so the biggest difference was just figuring out, what the heck am I going to do with my life? Because it's fun to celebrate and, of course, party. And this was 1999. So I partied, like it was 1999. Not really. I'm making a bad joke, but if you know the Prince song,
yeah.
But it just, I had all this time, and after, there's only so much of that you can do. And then you realize you want to wake up, at least for me, in the morning and have a purpose and have something that you look forward to. And not to mention, when you meet new people, it's often people will say, well, what do you do? What do you do? Especially in my circle of people, most people were working or trying to put themselves through college. And, I just won the lottery and I just sit around. That's not something that I wanted to say. Like, I needed a purpose, something that I woke up in the morning and I felt excited about life. And so this can happen to a lot of people if you retire at any age, really. It's like, what the heck? It sounds so good, and it is amazing not to have to do something that you don't want to do, but then you have to sort of reinvent yourself. And so I had to find, at least for me, what made me happy.
Absolutely. Hey, Tim, you know what? I'm so sorry. I'm going to keep you here for a few more minutes. I know there's going to be a portion of the people who see this who are going to wonder if you have any tips, any tricks, if there's a system. You've heard of all of these from the other winners, and also just you being a winner yourself.
Yeah. So if you are playing the lottery, and most people that I've met and interviewed that have won major prizes believed for one reason or another that they might win, or at least that they had a chance. And so that's one thing that a lot of people have in common. But I think, it can happen to to anybody, and it really can, whether it's a scratch ticket or a draw game. And it's about how you feel about it, because it should be a positive experience. And so if it hurts you to lose the $2 or the $5 that it costs to play, then, don't play. Maybe don't play. Do what's best for you, but I feel that it should be a positive experience. And all the times that I played before I won, from the time that I had this dream that convinced me it was going to happen to the time that I won, the times that I played in between, obviously I didn't win and I was disappointed, but I never thought, well, I'm just going to stop. I'm not going to win. That dream was nonsense. I felt that it is possible, and I believed that it was possible, because it is possible. And as cliche as it sounds, you have to be in it to win it. It only takes one ticket for a chance. Just never spend more than you can afford to lose, but also know you do have a chance.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, did you use the quick pick or personal numbers to win it?
I used a computer-generated quick pick, and it's really interesting that 80%, I was told anyway by a former lottery director in one of my interviews, that 80% of people that win the lottery, at least in the United States, major games, win on quick picks as well, computer-generated picks, and 20% on choosing your own. But also 80% of people buy tickets that way. And so it's exactly the same. But so I never had a dream about specific numbers. I wasn't drawn to specific numbers. In my dream, I just felt like if it's meant to happen, it's going to happen, because the dream convinced me that it was going to happen. So I felt like it didn't matter if I chose my own. That's just how I felt about it.
Right. Is that the same experience for the lottery winners that you interviewed too? Usually the quick pick?
Usually, but not always. Some people I've interviewed a couple people, at least one person that dreamt specific numbers, and then he won on those numbers. So how surreal is that? But even if you don't have a dream about it, there are people that win both ways. And so it really does happen both ways.
Tim, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Do you have people who like DM you or email you and go, Tim, give me 5 numbers, and or give me the mega? What do you think it's going to be?
I do, especially from time to time I do live videos, and oftentimes there are people there like, give me some lucky numbers, and so I'm pretty used to that. And I don't always do that, because if I did that all the time, a lot of people would be asking, I'd be flooded with requests for numbers, but I do get that from time to time. And sometimes I've done that, and then some people have won, prizes.
Really?
And I'm like, wow,
well,
that's
all
awesome.
right. Well, gee, I better. All right, Tim, hit me with them.
Yeah. Hey.
Very cool, Tim. You have a very interesting story. Very lucky, I'm sure. Not just the luck, but the manifestation, the dream that you had. It's so interesting how it has impacted your life in a way that has really brought out the purpose, and that you kind of had that core of wanting to be a journalist and pursuing that dream, and winning millions enhanced that experience and made it probably possible on the biggest stage. Very, very cool story, Tim. Okay, I promise I'm going to let you go this time. Anything I didn't ask that you wanted to jump in on?
Not today, but I could talk for hours, so maybe another time for sure. I really appreciate you having me on here. It's been a lot of fun, so I love what you're doing.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Tim. Take care.
Yeah, thank you.